Trigger warning, mentions of suicide and suicide loss throughout the episode. If you need support resources, you can find them in our show notes.
Welcome everyone back to another episode of Jack Amplified. Thank you so much to our loyal listeners. And if you're a new listener, welcome to Jack Amplified. Every week we have engaging conversations around shaping youth mental health in Canada. And every week we have a bit of a different arc, a different theme. This week is no different. So today's theme is exploring grief, resilience, and mental health advocacy through personal experience. And today's guest, Celia, shares how her journey navigating the loss of her father shaped her understanding of mental health and inspired her advocacy. And what do we want you to take out today? If you leave with nothing else, I think that his personal experiences, including grief, can be powerful catalysts for advocacy and community building. Sharing our stories, and that's what we do. You can get up there and throw a million facts on the wall, and people just kind of zone out. But when we share our stories and it really hits home, it can reduce the stigma, foster empathy, and create spaces for connection. It gets people talking. When people can relate to a personal story, it might start a conversation. That conversation can lead to some really great things. And with that being said, I want to introduce our incredible guest today. So Celia is a mental health advocate, first and foremost, storyteller, and a past competitor just recently on the Amazing Race Canada Season 11. She was born and raised in Charlottetown, PEI. We were just talking about that. I've had the opportunity of visiting PEI, and it's incredible. I loved it. And she now lives in Toronto, so that's a big jump, and works as a film and television actress. Her advocacy uses her personal experiences, including the loss of her father, to raise awareness about mental health and suicide prevention. Celia focuses on creating spaces where people feel safe, seen, and supported. Welcome, Celia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No, it's great to have you here. And I always like anyone who's willing to share their personal story, the courage that takes to talk about it is so appreciated, because I think, so many people suffer in silence, and so many people have suffered through different challenges. And when you share and you're open about it, it can create those conversations we really need to have. Now, you've become a national advocate for mental health, and you brought your story of suicide loss and healing to your time on the Amazing Race Canada. Can you tell us about that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was grieving the loss of my father, I was grieving in a way that was very isolating. I made sort of a promise to myself from the start that I was going to feel all my pain as it came up. So I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time screaming and crying and walking outside in nature and being with my dog and being alone. And as healing as that is to a certain degree, there comes a point where it can go a little bit too far, and we need to engage with other humans, right? So when the opportunity for the Amazing Race came up, this was presented by my sister. It was something I was quite hesitant to do. I was still in the middle of healing. Truly, my heart was broken in a million pieces, and I felt really scared. Um, but when I made the choice that I would do it, I made a choice out of a place of reemerging back into the world, in a sense. A choice to reemerge without the thick armor and come from a place of vulnerability, come from a place of not having all the answers, not having any answers actually, but showing up anyway. And what I started to realize through vulnerability, through showing up without the answers, that if I shared how I felt, other people could see themselves in the stories I was sharing, and it helped them feel witnessed in their pain and their loss. And that became something that helped take me outside of my bubble and understand that we all have pain, and we all have stories, and if we share them, we can find that common thread that pulls us all together. So that's sort of where that came from. First, a place of being very hesitant, and then sort of, yeah, an understanding that if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have to be seen fully. I'm not gonna be able to hide. I'm not gonna be able to act my way through this, you know?
And seen fully you were. I mean, it's quite a jump to go out and I know you're telling me you're soon hopping on a plane to speak at a Canadian Mental Health Association conference, be a keynote, which is amazing and huge. But to take this on a platform that is nationally seen, with hundreds of thousands of people watching it, it's a lot, right? You're putting yourself out there. What did you want people to really understand, and why was it important to you to take that on, onto a platform where you were going to be put in the spotlight to talk about mental health?
I wanted people to understand first and foremost that they're not alone in what they're feeling. I think when I lost my dad, I was surprised by the reaction to a lot of people in my life. I think people got scared and didn't know what to say. So a lot of people would avoid saying anything. I felt like there was a bit of a sign on my forehead saying, like, I just lost my dad to suicide. And that created some avoidant behaviors. And some people in my life that I thought would be there sort of disappeared. And it felt hurtful. But within that, a couple people, one specific person didn't disappear and stayed through all the hard times and didn't move a muscle, just stood there strong with me. And without that one person, I don't know where I'd be. So in a sense, because of this one person that was there for me, I felt that if anyone out there doesn't have a person that is speaking to them, or that they feel they can relate to or can see themselves in their story, then if I could be that just for one person, that would make all the difference.
100%. Now, listen, I don't want this is not about the Amazing Race. This is about you. You're much more than that. But I do want to say, I think, when I watched the show over the years, I mean, mentally, I think that's one of the things that can break you on that show. Like, your mental health is challenged on that show, and you see people throughout the race. What did you take any lessons away from that to relate to mental health and resilience? I mean, I know you love your sister, but when you're spending that kind of time together and the pressure that's there, I mean, things can bubble up, right?
Oh yeah, there's so many lessons to take from the race. There's one though that I think encapsulates all this really perfectly. Um, I was traversing upside down across the absolute towers in Mississauga. This is 52 floors above the city. I'm exhausted, haven't eaten, haven't slept, haven't really drank water because you don't have time to go use the bathroom. So I'm tired, and I get about halfway across this line hanging in the air and pulling myself, and my arms start to give out. And I have this wave hit me of, I don't know if I can finish. I don't think I'm strong enough. And you know, the thing is I was hanging 52 floors above the city. So y- you can't just tap out. You can't just give up. You can't. You're gonna let go. So I look down, I see my sister's also down there waiting for me to finish, waiting for me to push through so we can continue to race, continue to grow as humans. And if that isn't a metaphor for what it's like to process grief, you're suspended between who you were and then who you're becoming, right? And it's in this place where it's terrifying, it's shaky, and you want to let go, but you don't. You breathe, and then you move yourself a millimeter further, and then another millimeter. And you keep moving millimeters, and eventually you find yourself on the other building, on the other side, in this life that you didn't even know could come back, or you didn't even know could be this beautiful. And that to me was one of the most profound moments of my entire life, to feel in the physical body that strength of pulling myself and continuing to pull through, and how that relates directly to the way that we heal. Because it doesn't all happen at once, right? It's these tiny little steps that we take. And sometimes it feels like we're not moving at all, but eventually we get there.
I love that. Yeah, it's if you're moving forward, you're still moving. Doesn't matter the speed, and you just have to keep kind of pushing through. So it's a great metaphor, and you're right, right? Like it is a journey, right? So step by step, you have to get there, and when you're ready to give up, you just keep pulling through. As long as you keep moving forward, no matter the speed, you'll get to that destination for sure. Get to that. So it's incredible. Uh, what help like lessons to learn? I'm sure it's the healing process is ongoing as you work through it. You said you're kind of halfway there when you took on this endeavor. What are some of the things that have helped you kind of push through and move forward with life in these in the face of tragedy?
Yeah. The biggest thing that sticks out, well, the first thing when I started to notice a shift was I went to a grief group with my mom with CMHA. And I was very resistant to this at first. As I said, I was someone who I could heal on my own. I'm a lone wolf kind of character. I don't need anyone else, right? Um, but going to this group quickly helped me, again, see outside my own bubble of feeling like my pain is the worst pain that's ever happened, right? And that's valid. It's the worst pain that's happened to me. But when I started to hear other people share their stories, um, it made me want to reach out to them, hug them. How could they be so strong? And in that recognition of strength in them, I start to see the strength in me, because listening to them, well, I'm like them. And so then it snowballs and it builds momentum, right? Um I I think that was a really big turning point for me. And then on top of that, I had an amazing therapist, incredible. And one thing that he told me, which really helped, was that depression hates a plan. It hates a system. It doesn't thrive in a protocol. So could you build a plan that's attainable, that's not overwhelming, and start small? So it started by like, do you think you could work 1 day a week? Like, do you think you could reach out to a friend once a week? Could you go for a walk every day? Like that type of plan. Moving my body, like starting to do the things that we know inherently will help us feel a little bit better, and doing less of the things that we know won't help, like scrolling and not trusting necessarily the thoughts that are telling us to just stay in bed all day. It's important to rest, but it's also important to, get up and eat a nourishing meal. So again, like a big common thread for me is just these little micro steps, these micro movements, the 1% better every day, um, really encapsulates what that healing process looked like for me.
Well, you're a very public person, right? And I say
Mm.
like through you talked about scrolling, and how do you find that balance, Celia? Like between like I know you're heavily into fitness, right? You're an actress, and so you're public facing, which can also make it tough sometimes. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, that balance is really tough, and I think it's still a balance that I'm trying to find, to be honest. When you want to create, you have this desire to consume other content to get ideas and inspiration, but that can be a slippery slope. I've found that consuming less content and just focusing on creating in a vulnerable way, in a way that's authentic to me, is how I can stay the healthiest within that world. Setting time limits on your phone and just actually sticking to them, and not not saying remind me later. um, yeah, just it takes a constant conscious effort, because obviously social media is designed for us to be addicted to it, right? Yeah, it's you gotta be disciplined with the social media stuff.
100%. I've done it before where I've scrolled and then like, did I just scroll? Like, did an hour and a half just go by? Man, I don't remember anything of what I just looked at. Yeah, it is by design for sure. So yeah, the discipline is there. Listen, if you want like nothing else, if people remember nothing else from today, what is the kind of call to action you would love our listeners to take away? And a lot of our listeners are young people like yourself, and so they're going to relate. And so no pressure, but your words will carry.
Yeah. Yeah, my call to action, it's really simple, and it's just to take action, to take tiny, loving action, right? Because healing does not happen in theory. It happens in action. It happens in taking steps. So that's my call to action.
Very cool. Love that. Take action. You're right. This is kind of along that side. Like if it's going to be, it's up to me. People can help you, but you've got to do it, right?
Yeah, and within that action, of course, also like I mean ask for help. That's an action, right? Drink some water. That's an action. I don't mean you have to go and save the world all at once. It's like it's take any step in that direction towards that future.
Very cool. Well, our segment here, our kind of mid-seg
Mhm.
that we have is called Talk the Talk. And it's just one big question. You've had to show a ton of resilience over these tough and challenging times. And that word has dropped a lot. But I want to know, what does that term resilience mean to you?
To me, resilience means feeling all your pain, letting it hit, feeling the hurt, and continuing to move toward a future that you can't necessarily see yet, but you know somewhere deep within you is coming and you refuse to give up on. It's showing up when you're sad, showing up hurt, showing up frustrated, showing up angry, showing up joyful, showing up grateful. It's it's just showing up and trying and continuing to do that. Continuing to try and trust.
Love that. I love that. Even when, trying is resilience for sure. So I've got one final question for you here, and we ask all our guests the same question, and you've been very patient with us. So thanks for that. And that is, what are your hopes for the future of youth mental health in Canada?
I hope that every single human, every kid, every adult, specifically youth, can feel that they have at least one person, can know that they have one person that cares about them. Um, I hope that we can live in a time and space where we can speak about suicide and not whisper it. Um, where 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 youth can understand that we we don't have to hit rock bottom to ask for help, and we don't have to prove that we should have help or earn the help, that actually just feeling a little bit off, feeling a little bit down is enough of a reason to say, hey, I feel kind of down. That we can live in a world and a culture where we just share when we're not feeling good with each other, instead of just say I'm good, where we can feel that it's okay to be hurting, because when we accept that we're hurting, that we're sad, that we're in pain, immediately we start to begin the healing process just by saying, "Hey, I need help," or "Hey, could I have a hug?" Um, yeah, that's my hope, is that we can just speak and share our stories and witness each other in our pain, and therefore feel less alone.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. I mean, it's so important. It's the work we do at Jack.org is really to drop the stigma and start the conversations and give people the tools to actually have those conversations openly before, and that whole thing about it, although your brain tricks you into thinking you're the only one and no one could, and it does when you don't ask for help. It feels like that so often. And that's why we have these Jack Talk speakers and people, when people see, and people like yourself talk about this openly, wow, I'm not the only one, or I'm an actress too, or I'm a young woman too that could see that. I want to thank you so much for your time today, for your leadership in this field, for speaking openly about that, for your courage and bravery and willing to share your story, for all the people that you inspired, and taking that to a platform like the Amazing Race. That takes a ton of courage to do that publicly, but it makes a difference. And I bet you across our country, there's more people having the conversation because of you. I love your thoughts on, resilience. And the takeaway. There's so many takeaways from today's conversation. We're so grateful for your time, for everything you're doing. Please continue to talk about mental health and inspire us. We're grateful for it. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.